absolutely throughout the bill are these, I've been referring to them as the psychobabble. The psychobabble, where it's forcing psychological techniques on your children, behavior modification, is throughout. On page 70, they refer to it as multi-tiered system of supports, positive behavior intervention and supports, early intervening services, and these things will be carried out by IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is special ed. So what is happening is that your school is being identified as a school-wide under Title I. All your children become Title I children in your entire whole school. That lays the groundwork for all of these, they call them specialized instructional student supports, which had been changed throughout the legislation also, which calls for psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, any kind of support, psychological support that your child needs to meet these behavioral outcomes that are within Common Core. Now, you have to realize that 2 years ago, when Secretary Duncan and President Obama had initiated the flex waivers, which was illegal, by the way, because what they did was create a waiver for federal law. And this is why they have to pass ESA and pass it quickly, because they're doing so many things against the law that they have to pass this law so that what they are doing is going to be supposedly legal, okay? So basically, over 2 years ago, we've initiated most of these things. We've initiated the positive behavior intervention and supports. We're training up their teachers now before this legislation even passes. And it's being carried out by special education teams where they have to go through 3 levels of support. It's called multi-tiered systems of support, where everybody gets a dose of psychology. And if there are some children that are not performing and meeting the specific behavioral objectives, then those children go to the 2nd level. And if it's more severe than that, then those children go to the 3rd level. And that's what was called the multi-tiered system of support, or the positive behavior intervention and support. This is throughout. These techniques are throughout this bill. Another thing, also on page 118, 119, the exact same wording. Page 132 is about the school-wide program. Page 142 says specifically that if children are not meeting your state objectives, they're at risk, or they may be at risk of failing. So not only can you be just at risk, but you might be at risk also. So you have to realize that every child is a target in order to implement this agenda. Now, within this bill also, I'm going to jump to the Universal Design for Learning, which is actually called cognitive brain research. Well, the cognitive brain research is the research that's being done that will create the techniques to make the child almost be forced to move toward these objectives. So all along, when you were told that your child's going to have a personalized education plan or a personal education profile or an opportunity plan or a career pathway or whatever they call it, the idea is that your child will have a personal plan, not to have the opportunity to expand their learning or to do the best that they can, but that they would have a plan that would be revolving around your child meeting specific state and federal objectives. So it wasn't a system of opportunity. It was a closed system, and that's what Common Core is. Common Core is a closed system of education. Well, I'm not even going to call it education. Let's call it re-education of meeting specific federal outcomes. And yes, I can say they were federal outcomes. The test that I filed a federal complaint against in Pennsylvania was basically the NAEP, which was the National Assessment of Educational Progress. And I have all of the criteria. For instance, when they said they were testing citizenship, they were testing the psychological notion of threshold, of what point your child would change by reward and punishment. So you had to look at the criteria because they were positively and negatively scored, and how they would set up the child in these little scenarios. It was very scientific. They could determine at what point your child would change their behavior. Okay, so this is what the whole agenda is. It's a collection of data. So when your child is given these individualized plans, the diagnostic interpretive result is that they're going to look at what they call the whole child, their belief system, their attitudes, their values,